analysis on page 5 through 16 is just what it sounds like. It's prepared by your management. It summarizes in management's words everything that's in the audit report. It's condensed. It's great information. I recommend that you read it. If you read nothing else, that would be where I would start, on the management's discussion and analysis. And it's supported by the audit financial statements and the audit notes that follow the management's discussion and analysis. So within the bound report, now we're going to talk about the green bound report. Within the bound report, governmental accounting standards require that you have 2 complete sets of financial statements. You have a government-wide set, which are found on pages 17 and 18. What this is a full accrual financial statements, much like a private business. Shows all money that is due and everything that is payable as of 9/30/21. Then you have another set, which is the fund level financial statements. This is a presentation most similar to what you use when you manage the city monthly and you see your financial information. It's based on the economic resource model, meaning that we recognize revenue when it's available to pay current expenditures. So they're 2 very different financial statements, and we'll see that when we walk through the rest of the presentation. The first set you're going to notice is the government-wide. I've summarized it here. We're on page 8. Is everybody on the same page as me at this point? Water and sewer, your port and harbor funds, and your internal service fund. The governmental activities are general fund and all the capital projects. You'll see that full accrual, including all recorded assets, the government-wide activities had $434 million in assets. And if you look at the business type, you had $352 million in assets. You're also going to see an entry here related to the pension liability. One of the biggest differences in this report is that you're required to record the city's share of the unfunded pension liability. If you look on the next page, 9, that's where you'll see that your share of the pension liability for governmental activities is $73 million, and the water and sewer, the business type, is $4 million. I point that out because as you go to the bottom of the page, it looks like you have a negative unrestricted net position of $73 million in government activities. But you can see that that has been caused by and is directly related to the governmental accounting requirement to record the pension liability. So when we move to the general fund, the picture is not going to look like this. It's going to be more favorable. You also, in this presentation and the government activities, have all of the debt that's owed by the city is recorded in this financial statement. So that's all the time I'm going to spend on this statement because I think there's better information to you is going to be when we look at the government, the general fund, and the fund level financial statements. But this is a snapshot of what the income statement looks like for the government-wide, and then you'll see all the expenses by department, all the revenue sources that came in, and how you ended the year. Full accrual, all expenses, all receivables recorded. So before I move any forward, do you have questions on those? The next thing we're going to look at is the government funds. You have 3 what we call major funds in the government, and then you have another 6 non-major that are grouped in the last column. And this is on the economic resources model, so this has less in it than the first set of financial statements. It's based on inflows and outflows available. You ended with a general. Actually, I'm just going to stop here. I think I'm not going to go through the detail, but to say that that's what the assets are. I am going to point out on the second page, you'll see your liabilities. The pension fund liability is not in this financial statement because it's not required to be in this financial statement. So when you go to the bottom, you'll see that you have a positive $23 million in fund balance, and 14.7 of that is unassigned available for future city needs. The capital projects fund did end the year with a negative, I'll go to $14 million, and that's because your payables exceeded the available cash and assets as of 9/31/21. If we look at the revenues that came in during the year, you got 65 million in revenues, 10 million in the capital projects fund, and 8 million in the debt service fund. On the expenditure side, you'll see total expenditures were 62 million for general fund, 21 for capital projects, and 17 for debt service. Now, these expenditures are before other finance sources, which are debt proceeds and transfers in and out. So once those are included, you'll see that overall, the general fund ended with a positive 5.4 million in revenues over expenses. Capital projects was a negative 4.5, and debt service was 8.8. Those two accounts are strictly related to timing of receipts. And if we take just a little deeper dive into general fund, which is the city's primary activity, you'll see that overall, compared to 2020, cash increased 8.8 million. Prepaid expenses also increased. This is timing. If you pay something ahead of the time when you're going to use it, you have to record it as a prepaid. And if you look down in the liabilities, there was a new account, deferred revenue. That is where the unused grant money related to the American Resource Plan, Rescue Plan, see the money to, and you haven't spent it at 9/30/21, so we show it as unearned revenue. No other significant things to point out here. Now we'll look forward at the revenue. That's a little small, so I'm going to glance at page 19. That's what page we're on the PowerPoint. Overall revenues for the general fund increased 9 million for 2021. And your expenditures actually decreased some.
What page are you on when you read that? What page are you on?
19.
I'm on page 19 of the PowerPoint.
Okay.
And we're wrapping up our discussion on the general fund, and we're about to move to page 21 to talk about the proprietary funds, the water and sewer fund specifically.
Enterprise funds.
You ready to move forward?
Yeah.
You'll see that there was a decrease in cash of 1 million, and your accounts receivable was down 1 million. The other account of the 6.9 million is actually related to a FEMA revenue, which we reported as due from other governments, so that's why they're on separate lines. We reported this year as 5.8 million due from other governments. You have 296 million in fixed assets, non-current assets at the end of the year, which approximates the prior year. And also, you'll see the pension liability because a proprietary fund reports the same as a government-wide, so you see the pension fund liability in both spots for the water and sewer fund. And the only other thing, we're on page 22, we're looking at the outstanding liabilities, very similar to the prior year, but at the bottom of the page, you'll see your investment and fixed assets is decreasing, and that's because assets are amortized over their useful life and over time. Page 24 are the revenues and expenses for the water and sewer fund. And that's where you see that depreciation expense increase over the prior year. You'll also notice the capital contributions at the bottom of the page, which are related to projects funded by FEMA grants, and that's what that represents. Your water and sewer fund is required to have a cash flow statement. Overall, you brought in $3.9 million in cash from operating activities, and you used $2.8 million in financing activities. You ended with an overall increase of $844,000 average.
That's still the water and sewer, or no?
Well, yeah, the water and sewer.
Okay, thank you.
And that's the only statements that I'm going to touch on as part of the presentation. And now we're going to move to slide 27. And as I mentioned, in these financial statements, behind are notes that tell more detail of the numbers that we just discussed. And I've outlined on this page several notes that you might want to look at to get more detail on those items. And you can read these on your own. I'm not going to go through all those, but that's where you'll get more detail. You were subject to a single audit because you had federal expenditures in excess of $750,000. You expended $30.2 million in federal funds. You'll see our report on compliance and internal controls over the federal programs on page 80. That report's unmodified. I did have a misprint right here. You have two findings. I mentioned earlier that in the management letter, if it wasn't significant or material, it doesn't make it to the audit report. And that was that we noted, and it's talked in more detail in the letter too, we noted that all accounts weren't reconciled and adjusted at the end of the year. So we're reporting that as a financial statement finding. And then the federal award finding is that your single audit was not timely filed with the federal government. We also have to test your compliance with state laws and regulations. There's a last report in your financial statements. It's on page 90. And we have one finding. We went so that you could get that corrected. And it may have been corrected by now as well. I'll go back to having management report back. So that's all I'm going to go through. I'll say one more thing. We do have some adjustments. As part of this audit, we have to look at your beginning balances, and we have to get comfortable with those because this is our first year auditing. So we can't just look at the end. We also have to get comfortable with the beginning balances. As part of that process, we did find adjustments that had to be made, prior period adjustments, and they're on 61 and 62 of the financial statements. So if we see something, every auditor's judgment's different, but if we see something that looks is significant in nature based on our original planning, we have to record it as a prior period adjustment, and we disclose it in the financial statements. And that's it. You have any questions for us and the team?
Okay, yeah.
I've been there for a lot of years. It's one of the few breakdowns you get that y'all sent to us that found so many mistakes and problems that we can adjust. My thing is, how did y'all find these and all these other auditors for the last several years went by them? Because this stuff's been going on for a few years. So how you picked it up in that is beyond me.
All right, so every auditor has a different level, has their own materiality. No auditor audits anything 100%. Audit is a sampling and a selection. We wouldn't have the manpower or the time to audit every financial transaction. So our audit approach identified these differences that we worked with management on, and management had to agree with us that they were differences, and we had to propose the corrections. I mean, I can't speak to how the audit was last year. I could just tell
I
you
was
that
asking how y'all did such a good job picking this stuff up, because a lot of questions need to be answered, and y'all seem to find, maybe not all of them, but you found quite a few that we need to look at and adjust. And I guess that's our next problem, is how do we adjust to make sure these things don't happen again? what we need to put in place, so that we have to hire somebody to help us do that. Because a lot of these mistakes was just either carried over wrong, posted in the wrong place. I mean, from the stuff I've been looking at from the auditor, I'll give us to read and everything, there's a lot of misstatements that y'all put in. And
The
all they
one-
gotta do is be corrected, you know?
The one finding that's in the audit report has your management's response and how they plan to correct it. And that, just reconciling some of those accounts and having a better internal control over that process is gonna catch these moving forward and ensure they don't occur again. And like I said, your management has already responded to how they're addressing that finding.
Yeah, but just some of the things, I don't know, like you said, what we probably need to do is get a report from our financial bunch and sit down and talk to them also. But I look like to me that we're gonna need some help to make sure stuff is corrected. Again, if it's possible. You know, when you pick up 8 million here and 10 million there, there's something was wrong somewhere. So what we either doing it wrong or not posting it right, I don't know. The money seemed to have been there, it just wasn't put in the right spot. I reckon that's how I explain that.
You got a good starting point, you're on the right track, and we'll be back to check on you again next year.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, 'cause we had some of these mistakes carried over from, 19, 18, 17, and it was the same numbers moved once again, over and over again. And that's what we gotta figure out, how we can correct that and do a better job for the finances for the city of Biloxi. I mean, that's our goal. We had the money, we don't have money. It's a deficit, it is a deficit. Numbers don't lie, you know. Y'all counted pretty easy. CPAs, a number here, a number there, one in, one out. I mean, it's got all balanced out somewhere. That's the name of the game. And what we were doing, I don't think it was working right. So that's something we need to look at. I mean, we have to sit down with our staff and administration and correct a lot of these problems. Appreciate what you did, Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Ms. Newman? Mr. Deming? Dr. Tisdale?
No, thank you. That was a nice, concise summary. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Glavin?
So in a nutshell, Ms. Marmalich, how does this audit overall, I mean, if we were to say how the city is doing as far as overall health, financial health, what does it look like from your professional opinion?
So where we look, we want to see the financial health is if we're budgeting properly, or if you're budgeting properly, and if you have reserves. And as I pointed out, when we looked at the general fund, you did have reserves. So there's nothing that jumped out at us that was concerning. If there was, they've been reported in one of our letters.
Okay. Appreciate that. I think it's important for the public watching this today to hear that. And we can always get better going forward. I'm sure we'll make that commitment. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Barrett?
Appreciate the detailed breakdown. It makes it a whole lot easier for us to understand it, but I have no questions.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Barrett. And I also thank you for everything you did. You have one more question? Okay, George, one
All
more.
the adjustments are made already to the new budget and to our new book. All the things that was, you changed, did y'all adjust all the problem that we found that was misstated, or what do you want to call it? Is it
Addressed in the
adjusted
budget?
now into the new book?
Yes, okay.
Okay.
Management handles the budget, but these things that we discussed would not necessarily impact the budget. Its presentation is showing an accurate picture as of 9/30/21. On an ongoing basis, you're looking at cash, more closely at cash.
Right. So bringing it,
Maybe a better way of saying is that we didn't adjust cash,
right.
meaning that cash in and out is all in there. It's the accrual parts of auditing and financial statements that we've addressed more than cash.
But the numbers moving from 21 to 22 is going to be more accurate than they were before as we bring them forward, so we can have this all fall into place and make it right, I guess you call it. So that's why I was just wondering if they'd been adjusted. Y'all said they have.
The
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Well, thank you again. We appreciate you. Okay, Mike, is there anything else?
That concludes my report.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to B, departmental reports, and there seem to be none. I'm going to move on to C, council reports. I'm going to start to my far right. Mr. Barrett?
Just a couple things. We got the paving completed on Three Rivers Road this week, and they're starting or have maybe started on the pre-work for the Eagle Point roads, and so we should be getting them done here in the next week or so. So looking forward to that. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Barrett. Mr. Glavin?
Thank you, Mr. President. I got a few things. First, Godspeed to our mayor, Mayor Gillich. I'm glad we got that report that he's out of surgery and on his way to recovery. So prayers to Serena and the Gillich family as he gets back on his feet as quick as he can. Shout out to Biloxi High School baseball. They held their annual Super Bowl bash, and it was a great success. It was a fun night for everybody during that night. Pretty good game, too. And this was a major fundraiser for the Biloxi High School baseball team, and it was a great success. Thank you to all the sponsors, everyone who bought a drawdown ticket and supporting that program. I think they're on to a pretty good season this year. I look forward to, seeing how all that plays out. Crew of Neptune Parade is coming up this weekend. Our Grand Marshal is Steve Azar. For those of you who don't know who he is, you can Google his name. He's a country performer and artist, pretty successful. He'll be downstairs at City Hall at 3 o'clock the afternoon before the parade begins, and we'll be presenting a certificate of appreciation for him serving as Grand Marshal. Let's see, what else? I do want to report, as I understand it, the county passed companion resolutions for repairs and paving of a number of roads, Big John Road, Paradise Lane, also Eden Lane and Hickman. Just a note about skeet hunt, as I understand it, the city has agreed to take over that road 100%. That was already in the works and in the hopper, and we're looking to take care of that. If there are any drainage or culvert repairs, we'll split that 50-50 with the county as we get that information going forward. I would like to request the administration on our first meeting in March to give an update on A.J. Holloway Sportsplex and the timelines and what the plan is going forward for that $5.5 million bond that we need to pass to make those enhancements. I've been asked a lot of questions by a lot of parents, coaches, concerned citizens about when work will begin and kind of get a compass on when that will begin. And I would just like, if nothing else, to identify those needs for A.J. Holloway Sportsplex and what we can expect next. And that should be enough time to maybe get that information to kind of give a full report in March. And with that, Mr. President, that'll conclude my report.
Thank you, Mr. Glavin. Dr. Tizell?
Yes, in addition to Mr. Glavin's request on the Holloway Sportsplex and the bond money and that timeline and a breakdown of those expenses, there was some funds still available from that bond money. It'd be nice if we had some idea of what that money is going to be spent on. I think it's somewhere between $1.5 and $2 million, roughly. So if we can see where that money might be going or what's being targeted. The other thing is, Peter, would you draw up a resolution to fund a study to determine the need for short-term rental, additional short-term rentals in the city of Biloxi? How many could we have that's viable? and possible locations or recommendations. But the Planning Commission is working on a study group there. So I know that's going to take a while. In the meantime, just from what I understand, and I heard Mr. Deming say several weeks ago that, the market's pretty much saturated, and I don't know if that's the case here or not, but just have somebody study this, somebody reputable study this, and I'm thinking that's got to be funded. I have no idea what the cost would be. I'm sure it could be done probably expeditiously at a good rate if we put it out there. But if
I can put some alternate language if you want to study the need or the study where it, what's the future, what's the anticipated future short-term rentals, or what are the
And
pros
what-
and cons of,
what kinds of
Moratoriums.
what kinds of locations, and part of where I'm going with this is that we have a number of established neighborhoods, and we've all dealt with that with short-term rentals, particularly in RM 20 and 30 zoning, those gray areas. But maybe just to get a better fix on where's the market going, what are those locations, it might, I would assume it would help the Planning Commission if they had this information as well. The only other thing I have, the third thing, is just to tell everybody, remind everybody to be safe at Mardi Gras and have a happy Valentine's Day. And if anybody's watching this as it's streaming, if you're a husband or a significant other, you still have time to get a card and flowers, right? I'm trying to help everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tisdale. Mr. Deming?
Thank you. To start, thank you for the update on the mayor. I know we all are concerned about him. I almost wore no socks in solidarity with the mayor, but I wore them. Did we ever get a joint resolution sent to the county on the Bluffs area or any other paving projects in Ward 4? I know we talked about it. We didn't have any interactions with the county, but we were planning to send one nonetheless. Did we ever do that?
We have not, we sort of asked for an awful lot this last go-round. I think you're referring to the help we need with the concrete streets,
Correct.
which they're not interested in helping us with. But we're going to do those as we can, little bit by little bit. You've seen the struggle in your ward with these concrete streets. They're very expensive to fix. And until you pull up the old slab, you don't know what you're getting into. As we saw in the Bluffs neighborhood, we had four separate intersections we were going to do, and we've been 30 days now working on that one intersection because of all the issues underneath it. So we're going to have to. The mayor released a substantial amount of funds into the paving capital project, and we're writing purchase orders as fast as we can and get the money out. We haven't purchased any, issued any POs on concrete roads yet, other than the existing one that's underway.
Okay, well, thank you. If we have the county on board with paving, though, I know Ms.
That's right,
Ms.
yeah.
Labatza and myself identified a bunch of areas that we need paving, as well as the mayor and myself, when we toured the ward, we identified numerous areas that need some help. We could sure use some assistance by the county to get that done. Lastly, Peter, if a study was commissioned on short-term rentals, where would that funding come from? The reason I ask is I would like to know what the cost would be before we spend it. I don't know that a majority of the council would like to spend money when we have extreme conditions on roads, drainage, that may be better use of that money. But if it's not professional services or something that the mayor can spend without the permission of without the permission of the council, I just wanted to know that.
I'd probably get a couple of quotes, and if it's 5,000 or under, we could do it as a PO type thing. So we still probably would want to get it approved either way.
Okay, thank you, and Mr. President, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Deming. Mr. Newman? Okay, thank you, Mr. Newman. Mr. Lawrence?
Yeah, I know we're talking about the bond money. Is that where the fencing gonna come from for these parks? Or we have that money allocated for somewhere else?
It will have to come from the bond money. It's not in the Parks and Rec budget.
Okay, the same way with the concession stand under the bathroom for the pickleball courts, the same thing?
Right, same source.
So we're tying the whole city up in this one bond?
I think this is a conversation you need to have with the mayor.
Yeah.
He's got that money, that $1.5 million or so left. He's sitting on that waiting to make a decision about where to spend it. So I think when he's back, maybe have that one-on-one with him.
We can do that.
That 1.2 million is not going to go very far between 7 of you.
No, that's the problem you have, you know. You never had that much money left to do much anything with.
Mhm.
You probably can't get half the stuff everybody wants done with $1 million, you know. It's just not that much money. You know, y'all talking about the short-term rentals. I think that's probably a good thing. I think something else you ought to throw in there too, Pete, is the cannabis, to make sure we put them in the right places, not everywhere in the city. That's something that needs to be looked at too. That's one reason we look like we're pulling this off for Keesler. You know, outside the gate, whatever. And it makes sense. You need to make sure that things are done right. And like Kenny said, get ready for 2 great parades in the city of Biloxi. Neptune Saturday night. That's the only night parade we have in Biloxi. It's a big event for downtown people. And then we had the Mardi Gras Day parade at 1 o'clock, and that's huge. So it's a big parade. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lawrence. And I have 2 things. Just wanted to make sure we wish our mayor speedy recovery. We definitely been praying for him. And the other thing I have is on the 24th of this month at the Frank Gruich Community Center from 6 to 8, we're having a Black History program. So for all those who are interested, please come out and attend. That concludes my report. We're going to move right on to the public agenda. Public agenda is citizen comments with a total allotted time of 45 minutes, 3 minutes per person strictly enforced. I'm going to ask anyone on my left side, anyone on my left would like to come up and speak. Anyone on my left? Okay, anyone on my right that would like to come up and speak? Please sign in, give your name and your address, please. Ms. McIntyre?
Good evening.
Okay.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Pastor McIntyre. I came once before concerning that gate on that park, and that gate is still locked. And what I'm concerned, I just talked to Governor Tate Reed up in Jackson, and they trying to figure out why would a public park have any locks on any side of the gate. So they direct me to the I am disabled. Yes, I have wheelchair when I need it, handicap wheelchair when I need it. I have another girl with, she's blind. She won't want to get to the park. They want us to walk through the grass. You cannot walk through the grass. He said, no, any public place got to have a disability way in. Y'all talking about walking through the grass. We have a long way to walk through the grass. You in a wheelchair, you cannot get through the grass. You cannot pull a wheelchair through grass. That's against the law. That's a lawsuit. I have talked to the disability right people up in Jackson. They're gonna handle it, but they told me to come again and bring it back to y'all attention. And this time and not, then we're gonna go forth with what I got to do. Because the young lady approached me in the grocery store saying, I got the key, so if you want it unlocked, you're not getting it unlocked. I don't have no time for no game. I'm not arguing about that. I'm arguing about disability people. We got that sidewalk. That's for disability people to walk on. or push the wheelchair on. You cannot have a public place without the assistance of disability. Cannot do it. You got to have it. That's like when I park down there, you got to have a ramp to get in. Even in the bathroom, you got to have a handicap accessory. They was just blowed out. Governor Tate Reed them was just blowed out. They cannot believe it. I'm gonna carry it on to where I have to carry it. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. God knows. I'm not being disrespectful. I love Phoenix God. I have no problem with him. The problem is, why have two gates open? They said, what's the purpose with one lock when they got two or three open? You cannot do it in a public park. It's against the law. It's against the disability right. So I'm gonna leave it in here, because I know they went out there last week with us, the fire chief. They knew that if somebody started shooting, you got to climb over the fence to get out. That's unsafety. That's a safety hazard. I'm gonna leave it to y'all, but I'm gonna bring it back to y'all. I have been talking to the disability lawyer and Tate Reed. I'm just disappointed. They can't believe it.
Thank you, Ms. McIntyre.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else on my right? Anyone else on my right? Anyone in the back? Okay. Anyone else I may have forgotten? Okay, with that being said, citizen comments are now closed. We're going to move on to our policy agenda. Ordinance A.
Ordinance to amend the land development ordinance pertaining to Architectural and Historical Review Commission.
That was moved by Mr. Lawrence, second by Dr. Tisdale. Mr. Lawrence, any questions?
Yeah, Jerry, you gonna explain to us exactly what we're doing here?
The ordinance previously said on representation for the AHRC, the Historic Commission, that at least 5 of the representatives had to live in the historic district. So what's being done is language is being added that just says they either have to live in it or own property in the historic district in order to serve on the AHRC.
So they have to live there in own property?
In the old ordinance, they had to live there. With the changes that's being made, they can either live there, or if they own property in the historic district, then they're allowed to serve on the AHRC.
They don't live there, but they own a house in it.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah.
Dr. Tisdale?
I have nothing to add, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? That being said, I'm going to call for the question. All in favor? 7-0, motion carries. Ordinance B.
Ordinance to approve a zoning map amendment for a change in zoning from neighborhood business to community business for 226 Tuxedo Street.
That was motion by Mr. Lawrence and second by Dr. Tisdale. I'm going to add a motion to table that subject to call. Second by Mr. Glavin. Any questions? No questions? All in favor? 6-0. Nathan Barrett abstained. Okay. Ordinance C.
Ordinance to approve a zoning map to authorize a change in zoning for 2.6 acres from RM 30 multifamily high density to planned development infill district master plan for property fronting upon Maple Street.
That was also moved by Mr. Lawrence and second by Dr. Tisdale. Mr. Lawrence?
Jerry, this is off by the senior citizen home?
Yes, sir.
This is by Chula?
Immediately south of there and north of Chula and in between Maple Street and Pine Street. And what they're proposing, the PDI, the Planned Development Infill, was designed for East Biloxi or Old Biloxi, where you have limited land and you want to do a development there. So what Elliott is proposing, they want to build 27 townhomes for long-term rental there. And it's a nice project. They needed the PDI in order to save some of the live oaks that are on the property, so they've done a good job designing around those.
Well, this property is owned by the Housing Authority, wasn't it?
I think it was, Mr. Lawrence.
Okay, did they already sell it to him? So he owns the property now?
Josh Fleming is here. He represents Elliott. He can tell you whether or not they've actually bought the property.
Because everybody, that's a good thing to be doing, so,
Okay, he says that they have actually bought it, yes.
okay. That's all, thank you.
Okay, Dr. Tisdale?
I have nothing to add, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Okay, 7-0. Motion carries on C. Resolution D.
Resolution to grant conditional use approval to authorize the establishment of a cannabis cultivation facility for 226 Tuxedo Street.
I'm gonna make a motion to table it subject to call.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Glavin. Any questions? All in favor? Okay, 6-0. Mr. Nathan abstained. Okay, we're gonna move on to the consent agenda. I need a motion on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Dr. Tisdale, second by Mr. Barrett. Mr. Lawrence?
Yeah, Mike, on C, we had a discussion at budget time about this Saul group. Are they gonna explain to us what they're doing with the 5,000? They'll report that back to you?
We're talking about item Charlie C,
Yeah, Charlie.
the soil, and they made an offer, they made a request for funding, which was not in the budget. And they've since requested again. It's a smaller amount than they have been given in the past.
What is your recommendation? Did you want to support them or not? Since we did turn this down before.
We approved it 2 years ago, didn't approve it last year,
Right.
didn't approve it this year in the budget. They've subsequently asked for 5,000 and not the original 15,000. And the administration's recommendation is to approve it.
So approve the 5,000.
Yes.
Okay. And K,
K is in kilo.
kilo. They moved this 250,000.
We had $195,000 in the budget this year. We've already spent it. I think the last balance that Diana gave me was about 30,000 left out of 195. And I think I sent to the council last week a list of all of the developments that are underway or planned, and it adds up to more than 700 water meters needed. So we're going to run out of water meters before this year is over, in addition to not having any on the shelf for next year. And when you think about a water meter, when we issue a new site, they pay us for the water meter, and that water meter fund goes back in the water sewer funds. We're really selling these water meters. When you think about it, we're not just buying a water meter and giving it away. We're paying on the on the tap fee. They're paying for the water meter, and then that's coming back to us. But we've got to get some ordered because they've got chips in them. You know, water meter is not a simple little meter anymore. They've got chips in them, and they've got a huge backlog in the countrywide. So we need to. These are really meters that we're ordering to finish this year and to do next year. It'll take that long to get them in.
So the money they had in the budget, they spent already, is what you're saying?
Correct.
So you had to take this money from the general fund?
We're actually out of commercial 2-inch meters now.
Okay, when you sell a meter, do we get reimbursed and put it back in or what?
The money goes back into the water sewer fund.
That's right.
So we're basically selling the meters as part of the tap fee.
And,
Yeah.
Money to keep worrying about it.
on M,
M as in Mike?
yeah, that's you, Mike. Can you answer that question, Mike?
All right, that's the, if you look at the exhibit, revised exhibit, because the first one didn't show all 7. That's the 7 properties that we're going to offer for sale on the Division Street. But, for the new Keesler Gate. There are 7 properties. Look at the exhibit and you'll see where they are.
This is this, you
That's
talking-
correct.
Okay, and you have the 2 orange section marked. What are they supposed to represent? They got those highlighted. They got this orange right here by the roundabout.
Right.
And you have an orange section down there. So this is the Keisler Gate. This is the.
Yeah,
Benson Street?
they're not for sale.
It's not usable as well.
So what's for sale? The green ones?
The green ones are for sale.
Okay.
The rest of them are snippets that probably are not buildable.
But we're not dealing with those now.
So we're going to deal with those at a separate time.
So this is just putting this property out to be for bid or sell, whatever. That's all you're doing here.
Right, we're declaring them surplus. That's the first step towards selling. We can't advertise these to sell until we
Yeah, I know
can
that.
make them surplus.
Okay. So that's what I said. The first thing I was trying to figure out, that was Division Street we're dealing with here. Okay. 'Cause, Felix and I were trying to figure out where we was at in town. We thought you was building a roundabout on Carter Street. And on P, we hiring Mr. Batala as a contract worker? or-
P&Q are consultants working in engineering department right now, covering the vacancies that we have.
So that's
That's P&Q.
P&Q.
NQ.
Those are all consultants that have been signed on for another 6 months. That's extending their contracts through the end of this fiscal year.
All right.
I can't speak for the mayor really at this point, but I think his intention is to somehow in the next 6 months to identify and hire full employees for next fiscal year.
That'd probably be a good thing. Costing you money anyway, you know. And on S, this is the money we are doing from the, so you said you don't have enough money in the Port Commission, but we have this money coming from the county. That money not listed in the Port Commission?
When the money comes from the county, we generally remove it directly into a project so that we can track that millage and show that it's not used for day-to-day operations in the port. In this case, we're drawing from the port maintenance fund balance to do a small project in the harbor that has to do with replacing the foundation stones, the paving stones. So it's a matter of borrowing from the enterprise fund for a small project.
But I mean, it's right, that's the money restricted to do that, correct?
Right. And I can tell you, and we can do this off anytime you'd like, we've got a plan for the next increment of millage, port millage, in terms of repairing some of additional piers. We try and keep that millage money very carefully assigned to specific projects so that it's not intended to be used for day-to-day operations. We can't pay salaries out of it, for example,
No, it's supposed to be used for maintenance,
for projects, repairs and maintenance.
repairs, right?
And that's what has been done over the last 2 or 3 years.
Okay, and then, they have the thing on the, what is it? Let me find it. On, Oscar, since you want to do your marine thing.
Oscar.
Is this with the firm that just did the audit? Because now you had an X on the back to accept it, so what is O, what is that, what do you know with them?
It's an addendum to their original contract that they do some additional work. They did some additional work for us in the audit. Some of the things that they were talking about, like going back into the previous year to get to correct starting fund balances, that took a lot of trench work. I mean, a lot of more hours than they had anticipated.
This is added expenses.
Just
you're paying back
added
to them.
expenses to the audit. It's just an amendment to the audit contract.
And W. What's W, whiskey? You like
Whiskey.
that one? We got Dip Bank and whiskey.
We are in the
Yeah,
process, as you remember, of building an east-west road between Hopkins and Porter Avenue, north of the tracks, that will allow us to close several more crossings. That's being done with Community Development Block Grant money, CBDG money. This year, we're using that money to acquire the properties we need, and next year, we'll actually build a road with that money. This is an example of one of the properties that this is the just compensation approval for one of the properties. There are, I think, 5 or 6 properties that we have to acquire. And that's just one of them, actually. In fact, to tell you where it is, it's right next to the big old magnolia tree on Porter Avenue.
All right, appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Ms. Newman? Mr. Deming? Dr. Tisdale?
Yeah. Mike, did I understand you on item C? This was county soil and water conservation. Their request for 5,000, because I recall that we contributed, I think, 1 year, but
We did it 1 year, we didn't do it the next year, and apparently this is a late request.
right,
Yeah, it was budgeted in.
okay,
We
it's
budgeted 5.
The mayor put it in there.
right. So it's budgeted in the non-departmentals for 5,000 this year. Okay, that's all. Just wanted to clear that up. Thank you. That's all.
Okay, Mr. Glavin?
Yeah, I'd like to revisit K. As I understand it, a few years ago, this council passed an ordinance to pass the cost of the meters to the property owner. Previously, the city incurred the full expense. So do I understand this correctly, that we're going to transfer this $250,000 to purchase meters? And when that owner is charged for that meter, that gets transferred back to the enterprise fund?
Correct. I don't know how far back that other policy was, but as long as I've been here, the ordinance showed the price per meter for small and large meters. It's part of the tap fee in the ordinance. To be perfectly honest, I think the cost of meters is going up, and we probably ought to revisit whatever that price is. I'm going to do that in the near future.
Okay.
So when a developer does, say, 82 lots, that's 82 lots that the developer is going to have to pay a tap fee. And that tap fee includes the price of the meter, not necessarily the labor. But I think we could probably need to, given the amount of new meters we're going to have to be putting in, we ought to probably revisit the price that's in the ordinance.
I just want to make sure from
Typical, by the way, typical residential tap fee goes for about $600.
I just want to be sure, and you're probably saying, yeah, we got this covered, but that accounting for transferring this to the maintenance water, I guess it goes to Public Works? Is that where we're transferring this money into? Public.
Into the water
All
sewer
right, so
fund.
it's still in, we're just
Remember that Public
transferring
Works
it
has-
within the water and sewer?
Right, but remember, the Public Works has kind of a split personality, as you know. They've got Public Works, and then they've got water sewer, and so that we keep the two separate.
I understand. So this is staying within the water and sewer enterprise fund, and we're transferring it to the line item within the water and sewer fund for maintenance? Is that how I understand this? It's not going out
Into the water sewer budget,
in the,
the
within
water
the
sewer
enterprise,
budget.
within the enterprise
within the
fund?
Public Works Department.
All right, so it's coming out of the enterprise fund into the public works budget.
Correct.
Can you come up here and just make sure that? And I apologize, I just wanted to get this right for my notes here.
It's a transfer from the water sewer fund balance to the utility maintenance line of the water sewer department. When the revenue is charged, the tap fee revenue goes to the water sewer fund
It
as
goes
well.
back to the enterprise fund.
All in one fund.
So in essence, it's a loan basically from the enterprise fund, or it's
Well,
a,
it's not a loan per se, it's just using the available cash to purchase the item until a later date when the tap fee reimburses it back. I mean, but if you didn't sell them for 4 years, you had an expense now.
okay. All right.
Thanks, Diana. Yeah, but what's,
The only thing, I don't want it to get lost and it stays in the, because it's enterprise fund, supposed to be, an enterprise fund, dollar for dollar, and it doesn't get forgotten over in the public works area, and then we get in trouble at some point in time when we get an audit and it stayed over in water and sewer and didn't get transferred back.
those meters sit in the Public Works warehouse. Now, by Public Works, I mean the Public Works Department's warehouse, which includes items for Public Works and items for water sewer. There's also, the Public Works Department staffing is also, has a water sewer element that is charged, their labor is charged to water sewer budget.
Sure.
But when you budgeted for this year, you were asked to budget 195,000, that was not adequate. So we're goosing it up a little bit here, trying to get some more
Okay.
water meters before we run out.
All right. Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glavin. Mr. Barrett?
Only question I have is on V,
Yeah.
Peter. So what we're doing here, we're just putting this in surplus, and then we'll figure out those property lines later on with the 3 or 4 owners that butt up to that property.
Right, this is a irregular shaped piece of property where different neighbors have sort of
Poached it.
encroached into the area, so we're going to declare it surplus and then figure out the best way to go forward from there.
Okay, all right, that's all I have.
Yeah, okay. Okay, and I have none. Go ahead and call for the question. I'll take the against afterwards. All in favor? 7-0. Any against? Mr. Lawrence?
None.
Ms. Newman? Mr. Deming? Dr. Tisdale?
Nothing.
Mr. Glavin?
Nothing.
Mr. Barrett? None. None. Consent agenda passed. Just for housekeeping, that was resolution D, Nathan? D? Okay. Peter, real quick, for housekeeping purposes, I see a D was a resolution, we voted to table it subject to call.
Yeah, the clerk informed me that she did not have a motion and a second to put it on the table before it was tabled. So I think it'd be proper to revisit it, have it moved and seconded for discussion, and then it could be tabled.
Okay,
I'll
well,
move it.
we'll start off.
Okay,
Okay, well,
I'll move it.
okay, so we're going back to D, moved by Mr. Lawrence,
Second.
second by Mr. Glavin,
Now, you can make your motion again.
and then I'll go back to my motion of voting to table it. And that
Moving
second
to
was
table.
by,
Yeah, moving to table, subject to call.
I'm moving it to table it for subject to call, and I need a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Glavin.
Was this B, beta, or D, delta?
D as in dog,
Delta dog.
Delta.
Delta,
Woo.
That's, that's Air Force stuff.
Yeah, Air Force, Marine.
All in favor?
Okay, call for the question. All in favor to table it? 6-0. Nathan is staying. All right, now we got that out the way.
That's what I had.
No, we don't have to do it. D was the only one, because the rest of them was second reading, because they were second.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, code enforcement, we're going to number 6, code enforcement.
make sure
Code
I get it right.
enforcement, Mr. Creel.
Item A, ET Properties LLC, 1891 Pops Ferry Road, lots 134, 135, 140, 148, 157, and 158. I spoke with the owner this week, and he asked for a 30-day extension, and I told him I would ask the council for a 30-day extension.
I'd like to move for a 30-day extension.
Moved by Mr. Glavin, second by Mr. Lawrence. Any questions? All in favor? 7-0.
Item B, Lachey v. Jones, 2054 Trailwood Drive. That case has been resolved. Item C, Matthew Trinkhouse, 655 Michelle Drive. This property's still in violation.
Did you want to keep that? Want to keep that?
Any recommendations on this one, Jerry? Have you talked to anybody, anything?
We've talked to them. There's a number of problems on the property. The pictures get worse as we go along, but it really needs to be cleaned up.
Okay.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience with the Matthew? Anyone in the audience?
Yes.
Okay, would you come on up and?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I
Okay.
was not
Go
quite
ahead.
100% sure what exactly needed to be done.
Okay, pull the microphone a little closer to you so we can hear you.
I wasn't exactly sure exactly what needed to be done. I'd like to have a 30-day extension so I could get back on par with what needs to be done.
Mr. Trinkus and I had spoken yesterday. He has worked on a couple of the items. There's a couple open-ended items that I recommended that he get with Director Creel to discuss, and therefore I'd like to request 30 days for him to have the opportunity to
Second that.
Okay,
fix it.
okay, moved by Mr. Glavin, second by Mr. Deming. Any questions? All in favor? Okay, you got 30 days, sir.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Okay, and Ms. Krill, that concludes it? Yes, sir. Okay, I need a motion on the routine agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Lawrence, second by Dr. Tisdale. Mr. Lawrence?
Walt, we got the 1.9 million?
Good afternoon, Council. No, sir, not at this time. I emailed MEMA this morning. They said it should be in Mississippi, PA by tomorrow. That's their website showing the progress of the funding. Usually it takes 10 to 15 calendar days after that. So hopefully I have some better news at our next council meeting.
All right, is there anything else behind it? We got something else lined up?
No, sir, but we do have a conference call with MEMA on Thursday, this Thursday, and they should be able to identify additional funding at that time.
Appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, is there any other questions? Call for the question, all in favor? 6-0, motion carry. I need a motion to recess.
So moved.
I'd like to recess just to let the mayor know we're thinking about him in good health, and not in memorandum, but certainly to recess recognizing that we wish him the best in his recovery.
Okay, and we'll all second.
All right, thank you.
Motion.
He'll enjoy that. All right, so y'all need to get together.
All right, we all good?
He does. I just, Mr. Trinkus.